Hi everyone, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're actually going to be taking an early look at the Maximus 12 Extreme. So we're now on a Z490 chipset. So we have another iteration of stuff from Intel, and there's a new socket as well. Now before we do get into the preview of the board, because that's all I can show you today because of NDAs, and I know some people say, what's the point without performance? But it means we get to have a decent look around the boards to see what's going on, cover quite a lot, and then when we come to actually reviewing the board itself, it means I don't necessarily have to go into as much detail, and it means that the video might not be an hour long. But I do want to do a little bit of housework first. I know there are going to be a lot of people, both AMD enthusiasts and in general enthusiasts, that are not going to be fairly kind of happy about the new platform. But what I want to say is, we're having a look at the board. Today isn't for me to talk about what the CPU is bringing and what the, like the whole ecosystem's bringing. We're just going to stay very focused on the Extreme and what they've managed to do with the platform that Intel has given them. When we do get to do the main CPU review, which at the moment the NDA is the 20th of next month, so the 20th of May 2020, that's then when we can get right down into the nitty-gritty and start to dissect everything that I've done and delivered to the board manufacturers. And that's actually how I'm going to go about all of my reviews of the board as well, is that I'm going to stay very board centric, what the boards have managed to do with what they delivered them. And that's what I would always do as well, because there's always kind of someone that will go, oh, you shouldn't even bother reviewing them. But then that would make me biased, and I can have my opinions in the CPU review itself. Then I move on and review what the boards managed to do with the processors, and like I said, the ecosystem that they deliver with them. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at the flagship ROG board, the Maximus 12 Extreme. So I'm going to keep the format fairly similar to the way that I would have done things before, but yes, we are in a new location now, if you've not seen any of the videos for a while, and it is a work in progress, but comes in very familiar packaging. And then when we have a ganders round the back, you can see that they're talking about the big Olay robust power solution, which I will talk to you about in depth, although I cannot strip the board until after I finish my testing, because I want to test it, do all the thermals and everything the way it arrived. So I will strip the board down in the main review, which hopefully you'll get to see on the 20th. What we can also see, it's got dual Ethernet as well, because there is a Quantia 10G and then the normal Intel 1 gigabit Ethernet going on as well. And it does actually, when we have a look down on the, down here, Marvel actually, I do apologise, it's Marvel Acticon AQC107 10 gigabit Ethernet, and then it's the Intel i225V 1 gigabit Ethernet. There are a selection of different USBs available on it as well, but inside the box, because the board is already out, I've already taken photos of all of this, so inside is a bit carnage. But the main thing that I want to get out the box straight away is it does come with an included Thunderbolt add-in card. So you can see around the back that you've got your Type-Cs and then your display ports. It does need PCI Express 6-pin, and then you've got a couple of wires that you need to add on, the Thunderbolt one, and there's a USB one as well, so you can connect it all up. Fairly kind of standard black shroud. I don't think you'd want to be modifying this if you were going to be putting it in, but obviously you could pull the shroud and everything off quite easily and colour code it should you want to. You do get some other cables as well. So this is also for your Thunderbolt. So you get the mini display ports going into the display port. So you get those connectors as well. This is an extra M.2 add-in card, but it goes up like a memory slot up there. I'm pretty sure you would have seen that, but I'll show you it connected in a bit. Something I did see, which I was a bit nervous about, but I was more happy that it was in the box rather than fitted to the board, is a little bitty fan, and it's for the VRMs should you need it, and it does come with a little bracket as well. And when I do the main review, I'll be doing testing with it, without it, stressing the bejesus out of it, but it all looks kind of nice. And I don't know about you, stood here now looking at the quality in the video with the lighting, I'm actually kind of liking the way this is feeling at the moment, because don't forget I've not done a great deal of work here yet. You do get your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antenna. It's only twin connections on the back. Some of the older ones were 3 connections, but we will test that. It's Wi-Fi 6 on the board anyway. You do get, look at this, your drivers on a USB stick. Now, I will say that drivers on the USB stick, this will obviously be the launch day drivers. So if you're good at your homework or your housework, however you'd like to put it, periodically update these, because you don't want to keep going back to the plain, you know, like the original ones. You do want to try and keep it updated. And the fact it's a USB means there's no excuse for you not to do that. But look at this! You get a keyring. Yeah, maybe it'll end up on someone's like belt loop, or, you know, you could have your keys on it if you wanted. That's obviously what it's designed for. Oh, this is the mount for that little itty bitty fan that I said to you about. There's a few spots where it could go up here, but it's not mentioned in any of the paperwork. And one of the things I will say is the Asus review guide is actually so comprehensive. It's one of the best I've read for a while. But nowhere in it does it mention that fan, which is really annoying. This is your add-in card that you can put in as well. Again, it needs a 6-pin PCI Express power, so if you're going to be running all these extra add-in cards, you're going to need to make sure that your power supply has a few spare. There is a cable that runs off the back of it as well. This is for your node, because there's an Asus node port on the board. This is probably the only thing that I've actually seen that uses it so far, though. There is a node in and a node out, but you get a couple of RGB connectors on it. Also get some thermal connectors for you to put thermal probes on. Then there are 4-pin fan headers all the way around it as well, and it's all self-controlled. You can run it through the AI suite, you can run it separately, but that's your add-in card. I am starting to get to the feeling, it does, by the way, screw onto an SSD, but I can't help but feel that it would have been nice if all the fan headers kind of pointed outwards and there was like a cover over it or something, because a lot of cases now are getting glass back panels. But again, it's just me being horrifically picky, just brain farting my thoughts out. So looking inside the box that little bit more, there are all the normal screws that you would expect to be able to tie everything down with for your M.2s and stuff like that. You do get a normal 4-pin extension RGB cable, and there is an addressable 3-pin as well, because obviously the 2 cables are different. 3 pins is addressable, 4-pin is normal RGB, or RGB and ARGB. Then you do get your 3 thermal probes. I could zoom you in much more, but you know what a thermal probe looks like, don't you, boys and girls? And then you do get 8 in total SATA cables, and they're all black and they are all braided as well. So they're moving away from the normal plasticky, rubbery ones. You're actually getting decent SATA braided cables in the boxes with these now, which is a nice touch, but you kind of expect it when you can kind of assume that this won't be a cheap board. I'm not allowed to say about prices yet, by the way. I think that's later. You also get this, and I've already had it out and had a play with it, but yeah, that's what she said. It's a ROG screwdriver. You can see the spinning end, and that's so that you can put the screwdriver into your hand like that and push and still be able to spin it, which is kind of nice. You get a couple of different crosshead Phillips heads, but then you also do get this pretty cool little gadget, which is extended, but it's just got a round end on it, and that's because it's magnetic. It was magnetic. It is magnetic. There we go. When I took pictures of it, got them to stick on the end. It's not the most magnetic thing in the world, and sadly, it's only magnetic right on the very end. So if you go in at the side, it's not going to pick it up. I do think though, if you really wanted to, you would, oh look, nice bit of static going on. You would be able to magnetise that more if you had a decent iridium magnet at home. I normally magnetise all of my tools. Anyway, enough of in the box. Okay, so the board itself, I am going to give you a good look around the board. We're going to go slowly around it. Don't forget you can pause at any time as well. And please just keep in mind that there are certain factors in the NDA that I'm not allowed to show you yet. So I can't show you it built, I can't show you it fully powered up. I cannot show you the socket and all of that sort of thing. So, you know, just kind of bear with me. Looking at the board itself, does look and feel fairly premium. 2.3 kilograms, it's got a hefty weight to it, and that's partly down to the amount of kicking the tripod, but the amount of metal that we have down here. This is actually metal up here as well, which is very unusual. I would be very used to this section up here being plastic with like an OLED screen in it or something like that, but your OLED screen's actually down here. I will show you it with a cheeky power up in a minute. Not with a CPU in it, because then that way I can skirt around the NDA. But there is an awful lot going on the board. A big difference between all of the boards that we are going to see, previews, reviews, all of that sort of stuff, is what's going on around the socket. And that's because a lot of the boards have an awful lot of power delivery available. Whether we're going to need that yet, we don't know. So the Asus, we've got some big chunky heat sinks going on. This heat sink here actually kind of goes up and around the back of the socket as well. And until I get to strip it properly, I'm not sure how they're connected, but looking at it, this aluminium bit doesn't appear to be attached to this aluminium bit, but there is an awful lot of alley going on, so I'd be surprised if they've not done something with it. But big aggressive chunks taken out of it. Whether that proves to then be a good heat dispersory, or whatever it's called anyway, whether it works or not, we will have to wait and see. But it's an 8-phase VRM, and then it's parallel wired, as we've been used to with the boards previously, out into then 16 power stages. Each one of those power stages has a TDA 21490 Infineon MOSFET on it. That's capable of 90 amps. So we've got 1690 amp capabilities going into that CPU socket. I might remind you that's the same Infineon circuitry that they used for the Zenith 2 Extreme Alpha. That was built to provide the power for a 3990X and did so with ease. So the fact that they've got this all on here for a tiny itty little bitty CPU makes me stroke my chin and go, So that's something that we can debate about and discuss when we do the full review, but it's definitely something I think is going to be worth keeping an eye on. Just for funds, I kid you not, I've just used Mr. Sheen to stop my tripod from squeaking when I move it up and down, because I don't have any oil to hand and it's all I could find. Anyway, up in the top left-hand corner, we see our two 8-pin CPU connectors. You don't have to use both, but they are there if you want to have a big overclock or you're really going to be pushing things. And then we see our first fan header just there. Then if we pan across, and I'll do it this way with the actual moving the board rather than the... There we go. Then we can see our two CPU fan headers there. We've got a couple of RGB connectors there as well. We've got a plain 4-pin, and then you've got your addressable 3-pin. Another 4 fan headers up here. They're calling those the RAD headers, and there are more down the bottom. All of the normal fan headers are capable of up to 1 amp and 12 watts. Have to admit that normally when I run like CPU headers up here and stuff, if I'm running a 360mm AIO, I'll quite often put them all in one header, and I've never had any problems. So what I would then do is buy a PWM 3-pin splitter, PWM 3-fan splitter, so 3 fans into one header. Never had any issues. I think you would only come into any issues if you were using some massive amperage draws, like maybe the 3000 RPM Noctuas or something like that. Anyway, so you get another 4 fan headers here. You get your poster readout up here. And then if I zoom you in, you can actually see the writing on the board for what we're doing. So you've got the, oh look, you can see RAID 0. Anyway, you can see the lights there, your LED lights there, they're your post lights. So you get the CPU, the DRAM, the VGA and the boot, so that you get, it will flag those up as it's going through the post process and let you know how the board's doing. I know a lot of you are already going to know this, but I'm trying to give you as much detail as possible in case you don't. Slow mode switch there. Ln2 mode switch. See, I'm literally reading these down the side as I'm showing you. Then obviously start. Flex key, that's pretty cool. You can assign that to do what you want actually, but it will work as a reset switch if you don't do anything with it. Retry button, that's actually pretty cool. If your overclock fails, doesn't post straight away, if you restart too many times, it can end up hanging. You get that annoying Windows issues kind of flagging up. Do you want to restart? Do you want to do this? That will actually stop that happening. Safe boot is pretty cool as well. Get to a point with your overclock that you're happy with, you know you're absolutely fine with, and save it to the safe boot in the BIOS. If you do that, when you hit that button, it will boot to that and it will give you a chance to, it's just a real quick way of just being able to get into Windows. Then as we go down, 24 pin header, down, there we go, USB 3.2 Gen 1, USB 3.2, I'm not actually sure whether they're Gen 1 or Gen 2. I think they're Gen 2 on those, and it's just 1 and 2 because there's a couple of pairs. We do have some USB 3.2 Gen 1 and 2 stuff around the back of the board as well. In fact, I do believe they are, I don't know, I'd have to look it up. Pausing briefly to have moved the camera, you can then see USB 3 coming outside. Then you have, it's 3.1. Then you have a 6.8 SATAs, get another USB 3 header there, and then we get down to the bottom corner, which is the water cooling zone. Now, you can see that you have a water flow header there, and that's so that you can check the water flow within RPM water flow add-on. You plug it into that and the board will keep an eye on the RPM of it. Then you have a couple of thermal sensors to the left of that, and you've also got your front panel header here, and then just above that you've got the BIOS switch to be able to switch between 2 BIOSes, which can be handy if you're overclocking. You can have the most recent one and the one previous. Keep them separate. Again, don't forget to update them if you are moving on through your BIOSes later on. Those 2 water pump headers there, they are actually 3 amp 36 watt headers, so that you can run water pumps powered directly from them if you want. They're also a really good place that if you want to plug in a fan, that you just want it and you're overclocking straight away, full speed, plug it into that because they run at full speed unless you change them. So that's a really good thing to know. It's also a really good place that you can nail in a very high amperage draw fan should you want to as well. But then when we move that across, you can see that there are another 4 fan headers going on there, and they're naming them all the rad fans. And then we can see 2 internal USB 2s, which is great for those of you that have those AIOs and even power supplies that want to connect into that to be able to feed data back into the OS. Your Asus node port, which you need for the add-on fan card that we spoke about before. Then you do get a couple more RGB connectors. One is 3, one is 2. I've just seen, I've gone past it. One is 3 and one is 2. So one's addressable and one's not. And then we come over here, you get this header. And basically that header is a Molex connector. You don't have to connect it if you don't want to. It's there just to be able to feed extra power into the PCI Express for, in the old days, if you were running multiple cards and big overclocks and stuff like that. But it's getting kind of negated now, but it will be an option there for hardcore overclockers and the like. If we were to pull this cover off, then there are a couple of M.2 connections underneath, and you can see that it does have the Supreme FX audio cover thing going on there, and the onboard audio. And the onboard audio with the Asus stuff, it's always fairly good. and it is great for most people. Really, like, unless you're an audiophile, onboard audio with these boards, it's going to be ample. It's actually a ROG Supreme FX S1 2208 channel codec, and it's the ESS ES9023 DAC, and then the RC4580 op amp. If you're interested in all of the onboard audio goodness, round to the back, the I/O of the board. So zooming in, BIOS clear switch, fairly simple. Then you also get the BIOS flashback switch, and you can see the BIOS flashback header there. Little tip for you, if you're going to use BIOS flashback, you need to make sure the name of the BIOS file has been set correctly. They have got tools, and it's always been a little bit confusing. But if you go onto the USB stick with the drivers on it, if you go and have a look for the BIOS file in there, all you need to do, if you get a more recent BIOS file, is change it to the name, the same that's on that USB stick, and then the BIOS flashback will work. Press and hold it, you'll see the blue light starts to flash. When it starts to flash really quickly, that means it's working, just let it do its job. If it doesn't flash really quickly and it just goes off quite quickly, it means that the name is probably not correct. So as long as you make sure that name's correct, it should work. And that's the best bit of advice I can give you for BIOS flashback. Anyway, you've got USB 3.1 there, you've got a couple of USB 2s as well, you've got 4 more USB 3.1s there. Come down here. Now the USB Type-C's are USB 3.2 Gen 2, and then the A's are USB 3.2 Gen 1. You've then got your 2 Ethernets that we spoke about before, the 10G, and then a 2.5G. I did say previously that it was 1 gigabit, my bad. It's 2.5 gigabit, I do apologise. Wi-Fi 6, couple of headers there, already shown you the antenna, and then you can see the audio out in the back. You've got the optical out, and then you've got the other 3.5mm pin jacks. Those 3.5mm pin jacks also light up as well, so that makes it easier for you to do stuff around the back of your system when you're scrabbling around in the middle of the night. So this, boys and girls, is a little bit of a grey area because I'm not allowed to show you the board powered up, but I kind of take that as being with a CPU in and a system and it all completely powered up, rather than me effectively just short-circuiting, tricking it to give us a light show. So that's all I am doing. If Intel want to ask, is it's a light show, so that I can show you the RGB. Now obviously you can set all the modes and stuff if you want, and this is really just for me to give you a show of everything that comes on. So you've got white power and reset switches up here. You can see the RGB on the eye and up the side of the heatsink there, which is kind of nice. You can also see the little OLED panel flashing there, which with the software you can change to put your own stuff on it as well. You can set it to show certain temperatures if you want, frequencies. It's pretty kind of like fluid. You can even stick your own logo on it if you want. More RGB at the top. And then if we go to flick the board around, what I can also show you is, as I said to you before, the audio jacks light up. So it's a big board with a lot going on, weighs a ton, awful lot of power capabilities around that socket, and only time is going to tell with the main review whether it's going to need it. One of the things I will say is there will be, on launch day, being the 20th of May, a lot of other previews going live. Some of them are over there for you now. And I've only just realised that the tough box is upside down. You may have seen it in the other shot, but they are over there. I'm obviously incredibly professional, but they are there. And they, you're going to have a look at those, and there will be previews from other brands live as well, with the full reviews coming later on. There are things like price that I'm not allowed to say about yet. Price will definitely change between now and the launch anyway, but it's also still technically under NDA. I know that there's going to be questions about like PCI Express and stuff like that, but again, kind of a little bit limited into what we can actually talk about until the main CPU launch, because today's very much a look at the boards, and I can't actually kind of skirt around stuff. But there were a lot of questions put to Intel in a recent online kind of conference debate where they talked to us about all of the new stuff. And again, that's all kind of being bumped out until a bit later on. But we will cover that. It will get done. But that is that. There are going to be plenty more. You can click underneath if you like a lot more in-depth look at the specifications and everything that's going on the board on the OC3D website. But for now, at least, this has been the tiniest Logan with another video for you.